Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto finds his bloodline in high school DxD. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by PlaguedAmbition and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Ria's Gremory looked around the cold halls. They were empty, which was different from what she was used to. The Gremory halls were nearly always filled with a servant of some kind or family members running to and fro their daily tasks. Maybe that was just part of devil families. She wasn't too sure. Her mother had said she was going to be heading to the human world to visit a friend and Ria's tagged along thinking they were going to Japan. It turns out that they weren't. It was freezing, so cold she thought that you were worried the breath in front of you might turn solid and fall to the ground. Her mother though, she'd been pretty quiet on who they were meeting and that left Ria's in a bit of a pickle. She didn't know how to interact with whoever they were going to meet. They'd taken a carriage here and no one had used magic so far. Were the people not supernaturals? If so, how did her mother meet them? She looked up to her beacon of guidance and got a small, but warm, smile in return. It was clear she wasn't going to be getting any answers from her now. They continued a little further and matching almost in time with their steps braziers came to light spreading a fast warmth through the area. Not enough to take away the entirety of the chill, but enough to make it bearable. Ria's leaned up on her little toes as she walked and peered into the darkness ahead, making sure to cling tightly to her mother. There was a light coming from under the door at the end of the hall. She moved to point it out only to have a hand gently touch her face. "SHHH, I want to keep it a surprise," whispered the older Gremory. Ria slowly nodded and did her best to move as quietly as possible. She looked up at Vanellina who quickly turned away. It looked like she was trying to hold her breath so Ria's did the same. This must be important for her mother if she was going to such lengths. She took a large breath in and her mother started laughing, quite loudly. Ria's quickly yanked on her arm and told her to be quiet, but it didn't change much as they approached the door and it creaked open. The other side was lit with a dim glow. One that spread warmth, but not in a blinding manner. A gloved hand came around the corner and opened the door further before a head slowly crept into view. The eyes were cold, like when her brother came back from one of his meetings. They warmed quickly before turning to Vanellina. "We were not expecting you so shortly. Please do come inside and sit. I shall gather the mistress and young master," he spoke with a stern, yet somehow still kind voice. This confused Ria's, she felt both like she was being scolded and welcomed and didn't quite know how to take it, so when in doubt, curtsy and smile. The door stretched open wider and the man appeared to have vanished out the one on the other side. She felt a small tug on her hand before her mother led her into the room. It opened up into something that she was used to, only a lot of red, white and black with flowers everywhere. Vanellina drew her towards one of the lounges and Ria's felt herself near melt into its softness. "We should get chairs like this, mama." "Mayhaps we will, Ria's." The silence, broken only by crow call or the twinkling of a distant chime, grew ever more awkward. In the respite Ria's searched the room. It was tall, much taller than most, almost like a tower, and books. Hundreds, no, maybe even thousands littered the walls separated by singular pale framed faces, each face looked like a doll, perfect, without blemish, and their skin was the cleanest of white. She looked up, back to the tall ceiling, and felt something squirm inside of her. A murder of crows sat there, watching her, with their cold blue eyes. They let out small chirps to one another, but kept a dutiful watch. Ria's tugged at her mother's dress and was about to point the crows out as the door burst open. A blur of red, white and black dashed across the room and nearly tackled Vanellina from the chair. A rushed greeting was expressed between the two before the person turned to face Ria's. Like the paintings her skin was pale, but her lips, oh so red, pulled into a wide smile just shy of showing off her teeth, and this must be young Ria's. "My, your mother told me how beautiful you were becoming and a part of me thought she was just exaggerating again. You know how she can be." The figure gave a small giggle before taking up Ria's hands. The young Gremory nearly recoiled, she felt so cold, like touching ice on a summer's day. Ria's looked to her mother, then back to the person who was rather close now. She wasn't entirely sure of what her face displayed, though from the giggle of her mother, it was likely panic. The new person slowly pulled away before giving a tired sigh. "I guess you didn't tell her about me then. How cruel can you be? Well, when she is old enough I might just have to sneak her away and tell Ria's all about your college years." Vanellina stiffed for a moment before dragging Ria's a bit closer. "Dear, this is Kasha. A very close friend of mine. We went to school together. She can be somewhat excitable. Well, excuse me for enjoying the thought of my friend coming over for the first time in years." Kasha backed off and gave a huff as she moved to the chair across from them. She looked over her shoulder down the path she came before sighing and sinking into the chair. "Sorry, I didn't think it'd take him this long to get changed." Vanellina gave a curt laugh, while Riaz took her confused gaze away from Kashina up to the crows once more. I can say that I am most excited to see this son of yours. You've only spoken praise when it comes to him, Vanellina added to fill the space, don't be afraid to speak up Riaz. Kashina here hardly bites. Oh, that reminds me of that one time. Down behind the library Riaz doesn't need to hear that story, Kashina. The older Riti gave a small shrug, drawing Ria's attention back to her. Kashina was clad in a strange type of dress. The top of the outfit seemed to be a white frilled blouse that connected to matching arm pieces across the underarm. It came to a stop at her midriff where a coil of woven roses transitioned the white into a deep black. The black skirt highlighted just how pale she was and ran down to her bare feet. How Kashina was able to ignore the nip of the air without proper clothing was beyond Ria's mind currently. What drew the most attention though, other than the incredibly long red hair almost as vibrant as Ria's own, was her eyes. They were a shade that was between blue and purple and just continued to draw Ria's towards them. Her appreciation of her mother's friend was cut off as said friend moved again and looked over the back of the chair, her feet kicking as she knelt with her back to them. Everything this woman was doing was completely against what her mother had taught her, yet they were friends somehow. She sent a look to her mother who was just smiling, apparently fond of the scene in front of her. I know the way no, I don't need you to show me it was one time, came the voice of someone still outside of her view. They sounded younger though, and male, and apparently they were talking to someone else. It didn't take much longer for a young boy to walk through the door, by his side was the servant from earlier. The young boy though, he had bright blonde hair and blue eyes, almost like a phoenix. His mouth was pulled into a smile as he shook his head. Is this one okay mother? I can change again if you'd like. He motioned to a pair of black slacks and a deep red button-up shirt. The sleeves were rolled up to his elbows and Riaz could see a number of bracelets strung on his wrist. Some ranging from pure decoration while others appeared to be charms of a sort. Kashina let out a nervous laugh before patting the chair. Come on, take a seat with me. Cadley, can you fetch us some drinks? She questioned before turning back to Vanellina and Riaz without waiting for an answer. The blonde sat down next to Kashina and quickly found himself dragged into an overly affectionate hug in which she rested her chin in the middle of his head and swung from side to side. This is my Naruto. Ha. Admire him all you like Vanellina, but he is mine. A moment passed and then another with no one responding to her statement. Mum, can you stop being so embarrassing and you told me to be on my best behavior, Naruto trailed. The arms holding him in place slowly relinquished their hold and he quickly found distance from his captor. Kashina sighed into the chair once more before quickly perking back up. I know, how about we let the kids run off and play after their drinks? That way the adults can have our boring contests without getting them involved. Naruto rolled his tongue around in his mouth, trying to wash the flavor from it. Of course they were meeting humans. Why weren't they ever? Still, he didn't understand why he was forced to drink tea just to fit in, the stuff tasted like garbage. He looked over his shoulder and now he was stuck babysitting, great. What the hell was he meant to do with her? His mother had said to behave and he was planning to, but most of the time these meetings were just boring. The other kids weren't interested in training or books and hell he tried challenging one of the other kids to chess and he was pretty certain the child thought they were candies and took a bite. Maybe this was some kind of test. Maybe his mother wanted to see how he interacted with humans his own age, but that sounded needlessly boring and cruel so right up her alley. He stopped in his steps and turned to face the girl, Ria's right. She gave him a smile that was clearly forced. Great start. Naruto tried to pull his mouth into a smile, one of those ones filled with cheer or something, apparently that was a good way to get onto the good side of people. They like that stuff. So, do you have any hobbies? Smooth, real smooth. What kind of 9-year-old uses a word like hobbies? I like reading. Wait. He stopped his internal self-flagellation and turned to her with a natural smile creeping onto his face. You like books? Yeah. Tiny Naruto's danced around in his mind, maybe this wouldn't be stupidly boring again. Well, it was a little too early to hope. Maybe she is just one of those girls that tries to please everyone. Time to prod a little further. I like non-fiction myself, moreover fantasy. It's nice to be able to pretend to be something I'm not for a little bit, you know. Damn verbal tick. Oh, I'm more into mythology at least lately. He could run with that. He could most definitely run with that. Want to visit the library? Riaz looked to him for a moment before nodding her head and following him down the hall. If you don't mind me asking, how many of you live here? The place is rather large don't you think? Naruto paused in his step before smiling. Now, just like we rehearsed he muttered to himself. Normally there is a fair few more of us. But we gave them some time off because business is over with for this season. At least that's what Mum says. Sorry if the empty halls are a little weird. I just try to keep myself occupied so I don't think about it too much. He looked her over for a moment and it looked like she was buying it. Truthfully, they sent most of their servants away because they don't exactly look human. Riaz nodded a couple more times before responding quietly, it doesn't bother me much. I was just wondering. It does get a little cold here though, doesn't it? Yeah, I guess you get used to it pretty quick. But your mum was running around in bare feet. Yeah, she's strange like that. Sometimes I think she's the child and I'm the parent honestly. Riaz let out a small laugh and looked him over for a moment. Maybe if you were a little taller it'd be easier to see. Naruto looked down at her for a moment, standing nearly a foot taller. Coming from you short stuff. I am not short, at least not for my age, thank you very much. Anyway, we're here, Riaz informed Naruto before knocking against a very large door. He pushed it open and let her inside where books lined the walls even more than where they had been previously. He watched as Riaz spun on the spot to take it all in. Well, where do you want to start? Kasha and Vanellina sat across from one another. The tea untouched now, at least by the redeed. So hope the husband is treating you right or do I need to come kick his arse into gear again? Vanellina let out a small laugh which she quickly hid behind her hand. No. He is good. To be honest, I was expecting to arrive and there be no Naruto. Kasha rolled her eyes. I've never lied to you, Val. You understand my confusion though. Oh dear, Kasha lifted up her skirt a little as she lay down on the couch, did you by chance come to ask me to take you back? I'm not sure if you could handle me anymore. Kasha stretched herself out and let out a very childish laugh, I think I'd manage. I'd take you back if you wanted, but you aren't my only love. Not anymore. You'd have to fight for Naruto for that spot now. Sorry Val. Kasha, if you don't mind me asking who is his father? I'm not telling. He's special though. Not something like your power of destruction and Riaz, but he's special in his own way. The reason I'm not saying who the daddy is though, well, to be honest. I love you Val, but your race is a bunch of shits. I don't want to have to start beating hussies off of my boy while he's still trying to figure shit out. Let alone someone trying to force him into an arranged marriage. Also, who said it had to be a father? Kasha gave a knowing look and watched as he one-time lover deflated. So you know about that. Vanellina's question got a small nod from Kasha. Well, is it safe to say that you're Surzich's new penpal? One could say that, Kasha mused, kicking her legs back and forth on the couch. It was so hard to sit still these days. She had this build of energy she just wanted to let out. He was quite disappointed, you know. I can imagine so. Did he mention anything else? Oh, nothing too much. Just that you were running away here for a little bit to get away from your husband because of some fight and were taking Riaz with you, which made him sad. You know, normal things you talk about. Oh, and also that little idea of yours, Kasha flipped up into the air and landed on Vanellina's teacup before crouching down to meet her eye level. That's interesting, that is I don't mind it much. But try to force it and well, we might have to break up for good Val. They stayed like that for a moment before Kasha rolled backwards. Back into her seat. From what I know, they might balance each other out. Oh? Vanellina prodded. Well, I thought you just wanted to listen to my beautiful voice. You can still talk. Vanellina narrowed her eyes, ever so slightly, at the vampire. What do you mean Kasha? You'll find out or you won't. But you're welcome to stay. I'll just let the kiddies keep thinking that they're both human might be best for their interactions. I hardly think it is for the best, Vanellina suggested. Kasha though just shrugged. Maybe not, but certainly more fun for me. The night swept through and passed another day, then another and another. Soon a week had come to pass in this remote castle. Riaz was beginning to think that there was a reason that they were avoiding going home. She'd started to miss her brother, just a little bit, but she felt something of a growing friendship with Naruto. She didn't so much as pester her mother about returning home, but she did make sure to mention that a letter be sent to have her name recorded. Making new friends was nice and all, but she didn't want to fall behind. Speaking of her new friend. He was strange-ish. Moreso when it came to food. He didn't eat much, neither of the Uzumaki did, and the servants, as some had returned now, never lingered during dinner. Over the week she'd also come to notice that the sun never shined here. Mixed with the two not eating much, sometimes at all, their pale skin, and how cold they were well, she was starting to think that they might be vampires. If her mother hadn't insisted that they were meeting one of her friends from her time in the human world, well she would have started asking questions. She still asked a few, some of the servants stayed very far away from her, but those that come close she'd been able to speak to a handful of times. One was quite young, maybe in her late teens with long purple hair. Riaz was a little taken back, but apparently it was natural. The name was strong Japanese, like most of the people here, despite them all looking European and having rather thick accents. Still, apparently the Uzumaki family had some kind of special diet that they needed to maintain, otherwise they grew incredibly tired and they just ate with them at dinner to make them feel more comfortable. Rias could understand them not wanting to be seen as bad hosts, so she let it pass, mostly. She's been able to sit in on a few of the lessons that Naruto was taught while she was here. There were a great many teachers that drifted in and out teaching him things from history to maths, science and English, and some things she didn't really think needed to be learned, at least not for humans. Then came his physical training. Apparently they were something of a military family and had to stay in good shape. This meant that Kushina and Naruto started off each day with a bit of sparring between them. It got rather intense, and from what she understood of fighting, Naruto was quite good for his age. It didn't take too long before she had started to join him for his classes and his training. It was interesting enough, and there was a fair bit of tactics that they went over which she could use for her raiding games later in life. They'd also started to speak more after their trip to the library, and it turns out that it is pretty hard for Naruto to make friends. Something happened when he was younger, so he was pulled out of school and now receives all of his schooling here. He doesn't particularly like crowds, though it is much worse when he knows the people in them, or at least of them. This made her feel a little sorry for him. It must be hard not having people you can call a friend. Rias herself only has a tiny handful, and most of those are in the same position as herself, with a lot of pressure on them to live up to the family name. Although her mother was quite insistent that she makes sure to be on Naruto's good side, for what reason she wasn't too sure, but it didn't seem to matter. He was rather enjoyable company. There was a knock on her door and Rias gave them permission to enter. A moment passed and the purple-haired maid came in wheeling a tray of food. "Breakfast, milady." Rias gave a small pout. "I keep telling you that Rias is fine, Yugao." Yugao gives a small curtsy and bows her head. "I know, milady, but I have been given orders to address you as such, also," Yugao states as she pulls out a phone and takes a quick photo. "To do this." Rias sprung out of bed and moved to dash at the maid, only to find her closing on the door. "Yugao, come back here." "Forgive me, milady, but I was given orders," and with that said Yugao vanished down the hall, leaving Rias alone in her room. Then there was that which she dealt with. It turned out that the Uzumaki kept in contact with her brother, no doubt he would trade state secrets for those pictures. Really, people should worry about the underworld more. The week had certainly not been boring, and it was nice to have a human friend. She hoped he thought the same of her. "Young master, it is time to rise for the day." There was a groan in response from the bed as the covers shifted and curled. "Young master," came the sing-song voice once again as it drew ever closer. "Rin, if you have a camera again. I'll file for abuse," groaned Naruto as he slowly pulled the sheets away. His eyes flashed near white for a moment before they dulled back to their bright blue. He scanned the room and watched as Rin put something behind her back with a nervous smile. He crawled out of bed and pushed his magic over the surface of the skin, watching as steam quickly started to raise from the rather aggressive method of bathing. "Anything important happening today, or are we still playing at being human?" Rin let out a small hum as Naruto moved behind the changing screen. She moved out of the room and quickly came back carrying a tray of breakfast. "Lady Kushina has dinner plans tonight. She'll be speaking to some members of foreign power. You are not required to be present. Though I do believe that Lady Vanellina will be attending. Perhaps you can use this time to further your bond. Why? With Miss Rias, correct?" Naruto drawled before striding out from behind the screen, now fully clothed in his regular attire. He saw Rin give a sheepish nod towards him before moving forward with the tray and removing the lid. On it rested a blood pack, and he was somewhat grateful for being allowed this privacy in his room. "Please do try it, see it from our view, young master. She is sort of the first person your age that you have not hated." Naruto looked over it quickly. He was drinking teeps again today. He paused after the first mouthful. Something tasted different, but he couldn't put his finger on it. "Rin, is this fresh?" Rin moved forward and took a small sniff before smacking the pack from his hand and giving a feral hiss in its direction. "1,000 pardons, young master." She winced and pulled her stiff hand back. Naruto watched a white glove melt away from the few drops of blood that landed on it before it started to seep into her skin and turn to charcoal. It appears that someone had laced it with silver. "Rin." "Yes, young master." "Give me your hand," he ordered softly. The brunette rose a brow. "I don't think you mother would approve, young master. And I don't approve of my favorite maid burning in my room. Now give me your hand," he pressed with a much greater intent. Rin relented and offered her hand along with a deep bow. Naruto took it softly between his hands and in a bright flash her skin started reverting back to its regular unearthly paleness. "Better." "Much, thank you, young master." Naruto gave a small nod and released her hand. He turned to the left. "Cadley, report this to mother and check the blood supplies. I fear some of the younger servants don't have Rin's keen nose." The cold staring butler appeared in a kneeling position before giving a solid nod and vanishing once more. Rin looked between where Cadley had been and her charge. "Is he always watching you?" "The only time he doesn't is when mother is near. Still, this is a problem. Either someone added silver to the bag once it was sealed, or the Teeps fed one of their vampires silver while draining them, and I was pretty damn hungry. Rin, sorry, but can you fetch me another? My apologies, young master, but until I have checked all the bags you will have to settle for my blood. I do hope that it does not offend. Naruto let out a sigh and rubbed the back of his head. See, I can't really control myself when I drink from others yet. It might not be the bee. I insist. But, Rin, I coo. I insist. Naruto's shoulders slumped in defeat. There wasn't any reasoning with her when she got like this. He tried once and it felt like speaking to a brick wall. He gingerly grabbed her wrist and brought it up to his mouth. Just let me know if it starts to hurt, okay? Of course, young master. I only hope I shall suffice. Naruto opened his mouth to bite down, only to have Rin's arm moved from his grasp. Naruto, came the rather chilly voice of his mother above him. Rin was held back in her grasp behind her. Put your fangs away and relax. I shall find you something suitable to drink, and you, Rin. Do not think you can sate his hunger. He is much thirstier than your average pure blood. Try to keep that in mind before he kills you. Naruto watched as Rin looked towards him and her eyes widened in shock. He reached up and felt that his hair had become much wilder, like a lion's mane. His had grown long and he could feel his hunger stir in his chest. I shall pay rapt attention from now on, milady, Rin replied. Naruto could feel the fear creeping into her voice and he let out a huff and lay down on the bed. I don't feel like training today. I was coming to let you know we wouldn't be when Kadley arrived. Rest, I'll find you something to feed on. With that, Kushina turned on her feet and headed to the door, only stopping at the precipice. Come, Rin. You'll assist me. Of course, milady. Naruto lay there listening to them walk away. He still recalled the last time. He didn't want to. Damn, what he wouldn't give to be human for a while. To not have to leave your family when you go into the sun, to not thirst for their blood every moment and not make them afraid of you. He wanted to be normal. He wanted to be like Riaz. Riaz stood on the frozen soil with hands folded tightly. Her thoughts always swam when she returned here. To the place she'd spent her best winter. The once proud castle now little more than ruins with tombstones littering the fields around it. The nearby villagers said that the place was haunted now, that it was housed by the dead and meant only for them. For 3 years now she had returned here on Solstice Eve, not quite sure what to expect, but there was something that compelled her to return. Maybe it was just to pay her respects. She could not say. It's quite cold, Riaz, stated the one next to her. Her features were pale and her hair long and black. Her form shivered despite the cloaks and coats they were wearing. Strangely enough. The place seemed even colder now than it had back then. Riaz gave a faint smile before replying, "Yee, guess you get used to it pretty quick," which she followed with a small giggle. Is something funny, Riaz? No, not really, Akinoi just remembered something was all. Anyway, let's go inside. Riaz started to move towards the castle gates. Akeno shot forward and quickly grabbed her hand. But Riaz, the villagers warned us about hearing things. Riaz paused, her warm look slowly souring at the thought. If there is anything here then it's my duty to clear it out. I owe it to them. Naruto awoke to the still playing music. It was soft and apparently from something called anime, which was some kind of craze that Riaz was into. Well, nobody could be perfect, he guessed. Still his body was cramped and the book had fallen from his hand during his nap. It wasn't like him to nap. He didn't like leaving his guard down for who knew what his mother would do. There was a strange pressure on his waist and a wetness on his stomach. His eyes scanned the room quickly and found that they were still in the library. Good. Next to pressure, Riaz had held onto him while they napped, apparently together, which also explained the wetness. It would appear that she drools in her sleep. He attempted to shift her so that he could get changed, but it only resulted in having her grip tighter. He heard the click of a camera and his eyes snapped to the sound watching as Rin tried and failed to hide what she was doing. His eyes quickly narrowed in on the suspect who waved her hands in defense. It's not what it looks like, Lady Kushina said that I had to was all. Naruto gave a small understanding nod. Kadley, he called and like clockwork the man appeared, please escort Rin from the room and see to it that the camera is destroyed. Understood, young master. Naruto paid them little mind as they no doubt started their chase throughout the castle, with Rin trying to keep herself from being scolded and Kadley too just following orders. Instead his attention was drawn to the one wrapped tightly around his waist. He gingerly prodded her cheek and watched her nose scrunch up in protest. You're such a delicate little thing, aren't you? We aren't getting any ideas now, are we, Naruto? The voice was soft and familiar, there was a slight jest to the tone, and he gave her a warm smile in return. Of course not, then Alana. Though, I am coming to suspect that you two are not entirely human yourselves. Then Elena shifted in her seat over by the table not too far away. She leaned forward a little and took a glance at the duo. It would appear that she still has the habit of clinging to things in her sleep. Ruling on them too. My apologies. Naruto just relaxed into his position and did his best to ignore the discomfort. Neither of you display items of the church, and if you were wolves or ghouls, I doubt we could be in the same room. Devils perhaps. I have no idea what you are talking about. And if I were to say his name, there would be no reaction from yourself or Ria's here. The slight narrow in her eyes told him all he needed to know. Very well. Seeing as that is out of the way, Krusnik. Ria's wouldn't stave off the hunger for long. That must be difficult. I take it you gain such things from your father. Naruto gave her a small shrug. I don't know. Neither does mother. It just happened and she found out the hard way while breastfeeding. That does not sound pleasant, Vanellina commented, resting a hand atop her own breast. You know who your father is then? I know who sired me, yes. Though I've only met them once. Still, should I need help they said I could count on them. Neither of you will tell us how suspicious of us are you? Naruto let out a small laugh. Mother told me. Trust an angel to stab you in front, a fallen in back. A wolf to wet the bed and a ghoul to hunger for dead. The gods are jokes, most at least, and have given their lands for lease. But when a devil comes, trust them not, for under their foot the ground rots. I see the Kushina has become somewhat of a poet. Apparently she had to. It's what a good mother should know. They both shared a quiet laugh at Kushina's expense before an awkwardness started to creep over the room. She does an awful lot to protect you. The lioness will fiercely guard its cubs. I am sure that when it comes to Ria's that you are much the same. Indeed, she paused and looked around the room for a moment before turning back to Naruto, in saying such. Would I be able to ask of you a favor, Naruto? I will listen, though can make no promise till I hear what you want. Excellent. You see, when Ria's becomes of age she is to be wed, my foolish husband's decision mind you, to someone that she holds no kindness toward. If her feelings remain the same, could I ask for you to stand in? You wish for me to duel for her hand? Something along those lines, will you? She leaned toward the boy now deeply invested in his answer. Val. Only to quickly lean back in the chair at the call from Kushina. Ria's also shot up and quickly, but with futility, tried to wipe away the puddle of drool. Ah, look who woke up finally. Chided Naruto, causing the young Gremory to look away, possibly in shame at having been caught. Kushina seemed to calm down quite quickly after that. She looked to Naruto and Ria's before letting out a small sound, possibly of joy. Then it was right back to the task at hand. Dinner will be ready shortly, I just came to let you both know that. Afterward, well, how about we go to the festival in town? I heard that they're putting on a big performance this year. Ria's perked up at the mention of a festival, and Naruto inwardly groaned. He'd have to deal with people again. He wasn't a massive fan of that. Also, I'll need you to stay behind for a moment, Naruto. Why don't the two lovely ladies go get dressed and we'll meet them shortly, okay? Vanellina and Ria's left the room rather promptly, with the younger one eagerly talking her mother's ear off about the upcoming event. Meanwhile, Naruto just continued to eye his mother until the others had left the room. Why are we going? Well, we were invited. And that doesn't seem odd. Naruto's question hung in the air for a moment before Kushina just shrugged it off and reached between her breasts to pull out a packet of blood. Drink up and don't worry, I've already checked it this time. For tonight though, let's just be on our guard, okay? Naruto took the packet from her with a grumble. Fine, I hate festivals. I know you do, sweetie, but I want to see what those pesky humans are up to this time. It hurts. The ground hurts with its cold and the sun hurts with its light. The moon, soothing, bright, nice, red. Fire is bad, so thirsty, so hungry. A lion's roar into 1,000 shattered trees as the desert sweeps to a running stream. Red river, would you like some liver? No. 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 Desperate struggles, ripped clothes and hair. I see. But can you see them standing there? Their fingers taut, striped through her hair. Their faces burned, their tongues lashing. Can you feel the pegs in your arms or those in your legs? You shout, you scream. But there is no one to wake you from this dream. It continues, it burns and you're forced to watch. You rip at the pegs and feel your wrists start to split. You kick with your legs and feel the bones creak. There is naught to do but fight. Then he comes. Head held high. You see him. You feel him. Tempered scales wrought with purpose clang against drumshackle blade. Monster. Dragon. Kill the dragon. Reach out with fangs of truth and sink into his neck for final slumber. That'll sate your hunger. Kill the dragon. Kill him as he sleeps. Kill him so your mother no longer weeps. SHHH, mother, cry no more. I'll show the intruders to the moat. Through the door. And then I'll slit their throat. No more phallic intrusions or wicked cackles from evil men. No more spit or daggers or spears. Just quiet moonlight. Yes. Kill the dragon, Drackle, the dragon. Ria's walked through the halls with purpose. Every step gave her little flickers back to that winter. A time where she was able to be herself, though she had somewhat, not that she'd ever admit, been trying to impress him a little. He was kind, much kinder than most, but the way he showed it was a little awkward. Her destination was the library. It was admittedly where she spent the majority of her time during her stay. Those lazy afternoons with candle-lit rooms listening to soft music as they talked about all manner of things. Neither of them showing their age, but instead their maturity. She missed it, and if only for a moment each year she'd let herself recall it fondly. Despite how hard she tried, she couldn't remember the night she left, but she remembered finding from her mother later that they had perished. She reached the lone door at the end of the hallway. It looked smaller now, and it did so each year along with the pang that filled her chest. Her hand crested the handle and another reached hers. She looked and there was nothing. Her head snapped around and Akeno was trailing behind her. "You should not be here, Riaz." The voice was beyond soft, even fainter than a whisper, but she knew the voice. "You Gao?" She called and felt the hand return. "You're talking to Riaz." "One moment, Akeno." "You Gao, why shouldn't I be here?" The air filled with unease for each moment that passed. Then softer than before it creaked through. "Do not open the door, Riaz." She looked around and her hand trembled on the handle. Why? What was behind the door that wasn't here when she was younger? That wasn't here last year even? Wait, did she enter last year? She thought she had, but thinking back it becomes blurred. She could remember touching the door and the feelings, but nothing past that. Her fingers started to slip and the hand returned full force. She looked and saw Akeno holding her hand. "Together perhaps, Riaz." "Thank you." Screw the voices, she needed to see what was inside. Together, along with Akeno, they pulled the door open and Riaz was forced to shield her eyes. In the middle of the room laid a large crucifix plunged deep into the floor. Riaz pushed away the headaches and stifled the pain as best as she could. She went to take a step forward but was rooted in place as Akeno didn't budge. She looked back at her friend who had eyes locked on the symbol in the middle with a finger pointed. "Golden hair," came the near voiceless whisper from Akeno. Riaz snapped her eyes towards it and fought the pain that came this time. He was pinned there. Struggling and bleeding with chains wrapped so tightly they looked to strangle him. "Agon, kill the dragon, kill the dragon." Repeated again and again ever so softly from his mouth but filled with a hate that Riaz couldn't imagine. Her fingers dug into her palms, the eyes had been pulled out and the hair had grown long and matted. Wrists and ankles pinned in tightly with silver chains keeping him firmly against the cross. His body withered to flesh and bone with no muscle inside, could still see the outfit he wore that night now in tatters on his form. What the hell happened? And why couldn't she remember any of it? "Akeno, please, please, pull him down for me." "No, of course, Riaz." Akeno moved forward ignoring the feeling in her gut. No one deserved something like this, yet this child, who Riaz knew, was strung up here for reasons she didn't know. Being this close to the cross sent shivers down her spine, but unlike Riaz, she wouldn't come into pain from it. Her fingers tugged at the chains, but they wouldn't budge. No, they just raked across his body and clanged. She wouldn't be able to break the cross, it was too large and made from steel, and with how the chains were locked in that was a problem. "I'll need you to catch him, Riaz." The young Gremory nodded. She could do that. She had to do that. It looked like Akeno had come to the same conclusion as her. The pegs were locking the chains in place. That meant digging those out first. She moved forward and felt her skin sting everywhere. It hurt so much. She couldn't imagine how much he was suffering. She heard the first clung and watched as a peg was tossed to the side covered in some strange blue liquid. Another came and his body jolted now that the feet were free. The chains started to unravel and a few 10 seconds passed before the blonde shot his head up and looked around. He pressed his feet to the cross and Riaz shot her hand out. "No, don't." But he didn't respond and strained against his bindings till the arms came free. They ripped the flesh and he fell from the pillar into a pile on the floor. Riaz rushed forward and dragged him away from the cross. Her eyes scanned his features that were riddled with scars slowly mending. "Riaz, I thought you said he was human." Riaz looked at the boy in her arms. His breathing was shallow but still there and haggard. "I thought he was." "Well, I don't think a human would still be awake after that, nor make that choice." She brushed the hair from his face and watched as his eyelids quickly reformed. He stood up from her with just his legs and stomach and seemed to be swallowed in a golden light that forced the two girls to look away. "Riaz, this is most certainly not human." "Thank you for your observation, Akeno." They shouted to each other as dusty books were flung from shelves and windows shattered. Then as quickly as it started it finished. "What the hell?" trailed Riaz. His wounds were for the most part gone. His clothing, all but the now very tight pants, were destroyed as his pale features touched to the ground once more. Kill the dragon." He marched forward towards the door. "Naruto." Her scream stopped him in his tracks. He turned and eyed her for a moment. "It's me, Riaz." "Run, you fool. I'll hold them off." "Stop, please." You're not making any sense. No, he makes perfect sense. Geez, you just had to go and let the beast out from its cage. A new voice creaked through the library. Riaz and Akeno looked to the source and found a pale man standing in the window with a long cloak draped over his form. His black hair was slicked back away from burning red eyes. Kill the dragon. Yes, yes. I have the dragon's blood in me. Come, I was waiting for someone to let you out so I could see just how fearsome you are, the man taunted before dropping down to the ground. But before you get some blood in you, well, you'll just be a beast, won't you? That's what the others said. Riaz eyed him seriously. This new stranger was a vampire, that much was clear to her, and from the way he was speaking to Naruto, he was one as well. She looked to the blonde, but he'd vanished already. The sound of metal clashing drew her attention back. Naruto had already closed the distance, and his hand was forcing a blade back. So fast. He twisted on the point of impact and lifted his free hand up and throwing it at the man, before a massive burst of light shot into the ground, scorching it. Haha. Did you just throw sunlight at me? Now this is getting fun, a vampire that can do that. The man spun and kicked Naruto away before chasing him through the air. Naruto quickly caught himself on one of the bookshelves before throwing his body back at the man, catching him in the stomach. They flashed out of sight a few times before Riaz caught them again. The man holding Naruto by the throat. Then they clashed in empty air before flashing again and appearing on the ground with Naruto pinning him by his jaw. Man, oh man, that whore made a monster. The comment caused Naruto to let out a snarl which the vampire used to kick him away before ripping his own sword from himself. He stood up and shook himself off. He looked towards the two girls and let out a smile as he raised his sword. Akeno stepped in front and erected a barrier to protect them, but it came up just as he brought the sword down, sending out a wave of condensed air that ripped apart the ground it moved on. It tore at the floor and ripped the bookshelves to pieces. Akeno faltered, and Riaz wasn't sure if the barrier would hold. It never hit though. In front of the barrier was a pillar of golden flame that reached high into the air, scorching tips of the roof that it hadn't blasted through. The vampire let out a small whistle and looked around for a moment. Yeah, this is out of my pay grade. Have fun with the little tyrant while you can, girls. I'll be back real soon. Riaz watched as the man made to jump, but as his knees bent to propel him upwards, a flaming golden fist met with his face and smashed him to the ground. She felt the impact from where they were standing. It was Naruto again. His hair had grown longer and looked like a mane that flickered with fire, and his eyes had become slit like a cat's. He looked feral with his fangs bared as he moved to straddle the man. He picked him up by the neck and slammed him down with another punch, a loud crunch ringing through the air. Again and again it sounded out through whimpering that died in the end too. Finally, once he seemed to have had his fill of bloodlust, he picked the man up, which allowed the girls to see his crumbled face, before he sunk his fangs into the neck. For a while nothing seemed to happen. Yes, the fire around Naruto dwindled somewhat, but a stillness crept into the air, one that put the girls on edge. Were they to be his next victim? These thoughts tumbled through Ria's head, and apparently Akeno's also, as she grasped her tightly and whispered that they should leave. Her decision came too late though, as the vampire vanished with the finality of ash trailing his wake and slipping from Naruto's clawed fingers. His head turned to them, features becoming more and more human with each second as he stumbled forward and his wounds returning. He made it to the barrier and rested against it. His mouth muttering a number of incoherent things. But, he called to her, faint it may have been, but her name definitely left his lips, and that was all she needed. Riaz stepped through the barrier and grabbed him as he fell. His eyes fluttered for a moment before closing tight, and sleep took over. Riaz looked to Akeno and bit back what she wanted to say first before giving a small nod. Let's return home, the three of us. Akeno let out a sigh, but helped Riaz to prepare a portal back to the underworld. Surziches stood over the boy, watching, waiting. It had been a week since his sister had brought him home, and he wanted to do little more than pry any information from him that he could in regards to the cuteness that Riaz got up to while she was away, but he relented. Mostly due to Naruto's still form. He was alive, barely, but he was alive. He'd done well to kick the other maids and attendants from the boy's room and kept only the most trusted to be his carers. They cleaned the wounds as soon as they wept and kept him wrapped tightly in bandages that were burnt after removal. He had thought of gathering some tears from the Phoenix house, but he did not know how they would interact with the child, so he figured it best to leave be. Still, seeing the boy in this condition made him wonder the horrors he'd lived through in his time away from Kushina's gaze. He also needed to find out what happened that night, but again the boy was in no condition to speak. That was making things rather difficult. He'd also seen Riaz try to sneak him into her peerage, well he seemed to be not looking, but the girl wasn't strong enough, queen and all wasn't enough to make him a devil. Not that Surziches had expected anything less. Kushina never took half measures, and then there was the other parent to consider. Oh yes, he knew, and he was damned to get in the way of that thing on a bad day. How Kushina managed to sway that thing, he had no idea. And that was where the issue lay. He could call Seraphil and have a fitting queen for her, but he didn't know how that would be received by the boy's remaining kin, and any attempts at getting into contact with them had failed, rather fantastically he might add. They either flat out ignored him or sent back a headless messenger. Now, he knew it wasn't an act of hostility, it was just that those ones didn't like to speak to devils, at all. The door creaked open and his mother dipped her head in. "How is he?" she whispered. "Beauty think? How was your trip?" "Eventful. I ran straight here when I got home. The maids tried to keep me out but well, that's not an issue I have to deal with." She knelt down beside Naruto's bed and touched his face to stroke some hair away. "He's quite warm." "It's expected. I take it you still have no intention of telling me then?" Her question got a small shake of the head from Surzich's. "Fine. Well, there is nothing to it, a week he's been asleep and I will tolerate it no longer. Zeodicus, I know you're listening in, fetch me my evil pieces. I have found a use for them." The moment passed before Zeodicus arrived in the room carrying a large case with ornate details decorating its frame. He opened it towards his wife who paused for a moment. "Which one shall it be?" Then Alana's hand paused on the queen. She'd promised herself to keep it for the case of bringing Kushina back, should it be possible, but with Naruto in front of her now, well, she was sure Kushina would have a fit if she used anything but the best for her child. Sadly she took the piece out and pressed it to his chest. "By my name. Venelana Gremory ni Baal, I command you to return from where you slumber to bring forth honor and justice to both the clan of Gremory and Baal. Take the position of Queen of Extinction and smite those that break our code." Surzich's let out a large sigh which got his mother's attention as the piece sunk into Naruto. Was that really a smart move? "I shall deal with the fallout, should there be any. Now be a good son and fetch me some tears. I need to wake my queen." Great, she was in one of her moods again. There was little point arguing with her, so he just did as she asked. He returned a few minutes later to the same room, but it was hardly the same. It had been scorched black and small embers were still in the process of being put out by his father. His mother and the young, maybe not so young anymore, child, were having a battle of mentality and from the looks of things neither one was willing to relent in the stare that was sent to the other. "I was gone no more than 5 minutes, what the hell happened?" Then Alana extended a hand towards Naruto and stated calmly, "He awoke, turned into a lion and called me a defiler in some strange voice before he erupted in flames, destroying all the nice furniture by the way and coming back like this staring at me. I had the healing under control. It was just taking a long time to flush the silver from my body with all the compression from the bandages." Naruto took a breath and seemed to relax before sitting down on the bed. It broke in and fell 2 feet to the ground and no one said a word until he started to laugh. "Man, thanks though, Teria's mostly for getting me out of that. Such a nasty way to lock me up, but I guess I deserve that in a way. So, now that I'm somewhat back to a rational mind. What do you want from me?" "You missed the whole speech I just gave then." Yeah. I was asleep." "Good point, why the hell do we need to say something anyway then?" "No clue." Then Alana looked at the room for a moment before giving a shrug and looking back to Naruto. "I'll find you something to wear. Wait just here. Zeodicus, come." "Yes my dear." Surzich's and Naruto watched as they left. In a moment it was just the two of them and when Surzich's turned to face the blonde he saw a mile-wide smile on his face. "You heard it didn't you?" "Of course. Mother said it was fun to rile her up and I guess it is to some point. Guess that means I'm a queen of sorts for this period shit. Damn, that sounds like work." Naruto stretched out on the bed and gave a small groan. "Damn I hate silver. It don't burn me to hell like others, but it sure as hell slows down my healing." Surzich's let out a small laugh, honestly he was just glad the boy was taking it so well. The next question though, how's your mother going to take it? "Oh, yeah, she's pretty damn pissed. Already tried to rip the piece out of me. That I tell you is not pleasant. Hurt more than being chained to the cross. I'll have to go see her soon to sort stuff out. But you're more interested in how exactly I ended up there. Well, I'll tell you that story some other time, Riaz is here." And no sooner than Naruto had said that did he hear a small argument break out down the hall, like it did every day, between Riaz and the maids. Surzich's looked to the boy before he sighed and went to the door letting them know to let her through. Surzich's came back into the room with Riaz trailing him. She was in a buzz after hearing Naruto was awake, but she was also down after hearing that her mother had brought him back as her queen. Surzich's thought about telling her that Venelana would likely trade him to her at a later point if they all agreed, but it might be nice for her to stew for a little she looked cute like that. He watched Riaz run forward and pull the older boy into a hug and felt a little jealous of the attention Naruto was getting, but he knew better than to act on it. He was Riaz's reliable older brother after all. They broke apart shortly after and he reminded them that Venelana would be back soon before leaving them alone. He got out of the room and leaned against the door. Damn that boy was good at wearing a smile. Naruto awoke to a familiar but distant feeling. There was a pressure around his waist and a wetness seeping into him. He looked around the room, it either was not the one he fell asleep in, or devils were incredibly good at redecorating. He rolled over and dragged the heiress with him as he checked it out. Damn, they even did the bed, or teleported him, that was still up for debate. He sat up and frowned, how hadn't Ria's woken up already? He poked her cheek twice watching her nose scrunch up again and her brow furrow. She was such a little kid at times. Riaz, he called softly, it's time to get up. Wait, was he in pants now? Who the fuck dressed me? Riaz bolted up at the sudden yelling and looked around in a haze. She came face to face with the confused look of Naruto being trying to wipe away her drool without breaking eye contact. You should work on that, you know. Riaz reached forward and clobbered him into a massive hug. He attempted to protest it at first, but relented when it appeared that she didn't want to relent under any manner. Fine, fine. Didn't we do enough of this last night? Well, excuse, I'd thought you were dead, she huffed and tightened her grip just a little more. Hey, oi, ease up. I'm still tender, you know. She relaxed her grip somewhat under his protest. Anyway, Surziches could have told you I was alive. The air seemed to grow rather still, and Naruto felt he had spelled out someone's doom. What? Yeah. See, if I die I kind of just end up somewhere else, sometimes missing some memories, but for the most part I'm just weak as shit for a little bit, then back on my feet. Riaz held him a little tighter. You sound like you've done it before. Yeah, I tried mum's cooking once, next thing I knew I was in Shinidim. It hadn't fully dawned on him until then that Kushina was gone. He knew of course, but it hadn't quite sunk in, not with all that rage he'd been building up. His home was gone, Yugao, gone. Cadley and Rin hoped that they had run away when he told them to. He'd need to look for them soon, maybe once he was back on his feet proper. Wait, Rin was actually rather close. He'd look for her soon. The two awkward teens sat there for a few more minutes, neither really sure of how to push the conversation forward. It wasn't until a cough sounded out from the door that they actually split apart and Naruto was able to dry himself off with a small flick of his hands. It appears that I did not have to worry about waking you both. Came a stoic call from someone that Naruto did not know, at least not personally. He'd studied enough about Devil Society to know the larger players, and this one was on that list. Graphia, formerly a servant to the old Lucifer, married to the current one, and apparently a damn good fighter if word was right. Didn't picture her as a maid though. Nope. We're all good here, Graphia. Thanks though. Would you like breakfast, Naruto? He spared a glance to Riaz after her question and looked back to Graphia. Can we maybe get some proper clothes first, for the both of us? Also, I have still not had my question answered, who dressed me? That would be I, Naruto. I hope it was to your liking. In future, I can dress myself, but thanks. I guess this one, he motioned towards Riaz, didn't make your job any easier last night. Also, same room or different one? A different one. So I was teleported. Graphia nodded. We did not wish to disturb the two of you as repairs were done to the room. Naruto gave her a small shrug. Honestly, from what I've seen, Riaz would have slept through it. She only wakes up when someone starts yelling. Yes, normally myself when she is running late for school, affirmed the headmaid. This got a small chuckle from the blonde who got out of bed and stood before her with a hand outstretched. Naruto waited for a moment before sighing. You shake it and introduce yourself. I'm Naruto, Camilla or Uzumaki work, vampire prince of a sword. Graphia gingerly took his hand. And I am Graphia Luciferge, headmaid of the Gremory house. A pleasure to meet you proper. Naruto looked back to Riaz with a wide smile on his face. She's nice. I wish my maid was as well trained as her. Speaking of your maid. There was a woman claiming to be as such by the gate this morning. I had thought to shoo her away, but if it is indeed the one you are talking about then they will find a roof here for them as well. I shall see to it. The blonde nodded in thought. After breakfast, she can wait that long, it'll teach her some patience. Very well, Graphia started, also, Naruto, your clothes are positioned in the cupboard. I do hope that they are to your preference. Rin dusted herself off for what seemed like the 10th time in the past minute. Firstly, she was not a fan of the underworld, never had been ever since she started learning about it. Secondly, she had to jump through all kinds of hoops and backdoors just to get here, but she was happy. The pain in her chest had stopped, meaning that her master was safe. She'd followed the connection to here, apparently this is where the Gremory family stayed and it had been a hell of a journey. Her clothes were not in the best of shape and she wished that she held a second pair with her, but there was something around the castle that had kept her from getting near. Each time it felt like she was being flayed alive, so she tried to get stronger and attempted again each year. Only, she never got the chance, her attempt to rescue her master was short-lived as another had come and plucked it right from in front of her. Still, she now stood before these tall gates with a guard on either side of them, casting her a glance every now and again to make sure she was still behaving. Not like she had any other option here. She let out a small hum as she swayed back and forth on her feet. Damn, why did she have to wait? Then she heard the doors open. They were quite a distance away, but the scent that came from them was definitely Naruto's, though it was different, like a devil. She held back a growl at the thought and wanted to berate him on his actions. Then again, he knew better than her when it came to this. She'd been turned by him and had slowly been learning alongside him, but she was anything but a quick study. A few more minutes passed and she caught the trail ends of a conversation, something about breakfast and having been better than he expected. That may be so, but Naruto hasn't had a breakfast prepared by her, yet so where was she going with this? Anyway, they were at the gate, so she put on a big smile as he approached, even going so far as to ignore that pig-headed maid that had tried to throw her away earlier. Damn her, damn that bitch, she'd show her. "Rin," he called and she did her best to suppress the urge to shiver in delight. She nodded and pulled at the hem of her skirt, ignoring the small tear sound as she gave a curtsy. "Yes, yawn, yes master. It is good to see you in good he." Though her eyes were down, she felt him take a step forward and cut her off as he scooped her into a warm embrace. She wrapped her small arms around him and pulled tightly into him, stuffing her face into his shirt. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." All the while Naruto continued to hush and hold her. She wanted to say something else, anything else, but the words wouldn't come. It was her fault. If she had been stronger, if she had known more, if she had trained harder, then it wouldn't have happened. She was sure of it. So they stood a while longer with her uttering her apologies and Naruto trying to soothe her through them lest she break. Rin tightened her hands to fists clumped of his shirt before taking a breath in and slowly stepping back. She tried to compose and wiped her dirty rags across her face to rid the tears that had spilled. "Forgive me, master. If you will have me once more, I would like to resume the role of your maid to tend to your every need." She watched for a moment as Naruto seemed to be weighing up whether to take her back or not. Each one more painful than the last. She opened her mouth to speak only to watch him shrug his shoulders. "Sure, it'd be pretty weird without you at this point. Making you walk all the way here and sneak in just to turn you away. That'd be pretty cruel of me." He gave her a toothy grin before he paused and looked over his shoulder. "But, you'll probs need to do things the way that the Grimmery family does, so you'll likely be learning from another for a while. Plus we'll need to catch up on everything that I've missed. How does dinner sound, my room?" "That sounds wonderful, master." Naruto gave a short nod and turned on his feet before asking, "Speaking of which, where is my room, Grafia? I shall show you to it. Along with where Miss Rin will be staying." The days grew long and stretched into weeks as Rin gained an understanding of how things worked in the Grimmery house. Thankfully Naruto had made a full recovery in this time. Though it did very little to ease the workload on her plate. At daybreak for the Grimmery house she would be up and running around to make sure breakfast, fit for a duke, was ready for the table when the lord and lady of the house were ready for it. Then she was to sit in on the lessons that were given to Naruto and Rias to further their education. It appeared as though Rias wanted to study in the human world, which meant she needed to understand their system and work within its bounds. After their makeshift schooling came the study of arcane. A subject she had little hope with. Magic was not in her nature. It was not that she couldn't understand it, rather than her body could not produce the same effects of magic that Naruto and Rias were able to. It shamed her as a vampire. Then it was martial training. Rias did not actively take part in this portion, and it seemed to be a rather recent addition. For the most part it seemed sloppily put together and without organization. A different servant came each day to instruct, or rather spar, with Naruto. He was getting stronger and faster each day. Her own progress though, well, she couldn't flick a switch and magically become some grand fighter. Not that she knew of at least. So she spent a large amount of time getting her butt thoroughly handed to her and it didn't feel like she was making much progress. Currently she had some free time and was using it to scour the halls for her master. Normally the link between the two of them made the task quite easy, but it was blurred like he was inside some barrier. She walked past a door and stopped, he was on the other side. Rin pressed herself against the door and listened. He was talking to someone, though their voices were muffled even for her. She caught something about a trip and a trial, but not too much more. The conversation continued for a little while longer before she heard the doorknob turn and she quickly took a waiting position in the hall. Naruto looked at her as he left the room and gave a wide smile before striding over as Venelana left after him. "It is good to see you again, Rin," the matriarch of the family said. "I do hope you're finding your place here." Rin carefully gave a deep bow to the women. "I am. Thank you for taking me into your home. It was no issue. Naruto here wanted to keep you close, and so I made it happen." The two shared a look before her blonde master sighed and rubbed his neck. "So, I take it you were looking for me, Rin." She hadn't really thought of what to say once she'd found him. Honestly, she just wanted to tease him and have him return the favor like they used to. It was somewhat lonely without that interaction. I believed that at this point you would have gotten yourself into trouble and required my aid. She waited for a reaction, one of any kind really. Then Alana was the one that gave it through a curt chuckle behind her sleeve. Naruto looked at her for a few moments longer as if judging her actions under the firmest of eyes. Sure. You can help me pick out what I'm supposed to wear to this test thing that Alana has set me up for. I still have no idea why, but it's a thing, apparently. It matters because you were not born a devil. Society will see you as nothing more than lower class unless you complete these tests. Neither of us believe you to be so, thus I put your name forward. I have been watching you after all, my queen. Not creepy at all, he muttered back before shrugging, so that's the why. Now come on, I know you enjoy using me as some sort of doll. Rin gave a small bow to Alana while Naruto tried to push her in the direction of his room. I shall do my best to make sure he looks presentable, milady. That is all I can ask, and with that she left Rin to be shoved away. It didn't take long for Naruto to drag her through the halls. She'd stopped fighting once they were out of sight of the other servants or masters, and she promptly heard him close the door behind her. She'd been in his room nearly every day since she'd arrived, now though there was a different air about it. She wasn't here for any specific task like when she woke him in the morn, nor when she checked him before entering her own slumber. She had no reason for being here, lest she were to count her own boredom. The scent permeated the room and wrapped it in a tangled mystery that drew her in. Did it always smell like this? The lights were dimmed the same as normal, but different all the same. He strode across the room and tossed off his shirt. Fussing about the buttons once more. Well, let's get this out of the way I guess, he muttered out and turned to face her before giving a small smile. It took her a moment to gather her thoughts. Yes, she was there to help him choose his clothing for some test of sorts coming up. She did have a task. She could push everything else away. She lightly threw her hands up in the air and sighed, what did you do without me? Who knows? The shirt and pants combo that he often wore was nice, but he needed an outfit that would define him. What is this test meant to be like? A general academic one followed by some kind of combat performance. I want something that's a bit easy to move in if at all possible. Ah. She moved to the cupboard and started looking through his clothes. Most of them were stock standard and all too similar to what he had been wearing before. She pursed her lips before finding something hidden away in the back. She pulled it out and found it to be rather baggy. It'd be likely to nearly fall off of him. Try this one. It's a little big, but I can take it in. She handed it over and he quickly put it on. It was a little long as she had expected, but the black and orange seemed to mix almost naturally with his blonde hair and pale skin. There needed to be a little bit of give still in the pants so he could move about without restriction, and if they put some supportive tape around the ankles, well, it would be fine. The shirt was move akin to a vest with only 3 buttons, giving him less to fuss over. She moved over and started pulling it tighter on some portions of his body before pining it in place with needles from the stock at her hip. What do you think? Honestly, she thought he looked quite dashing. I'm like some kin to Arabian jinn. Rin took a step back as she looked him over again, well, maybe he did a little. Well, you can regenerate most wounds and throw fire from your hand, she trailed before giving a small shrug, maybe it is fitting. Maybe, he muttered and started to test the give of the clothing. He appeared happy enough if his nodding was anything to go by. Well, it does the job. So what were you looking for me for? He turned towards her and gave a knowing look. I was wondering if maybe, well, why are we here? Ah. Don't you like it? Rin paused at his question. Was he happy here after all? Was she just adding fuel to a simmering fire? I do, at least I think I do. I was just wondering if you were happy here. Don't you have things you need to do still? I'm not ready, at least not yet. I haven't forgotten, I guess we can just consider this a stepping stone to home. Don't worry, I'll take back our lands and avenge our friends and family, but I'm not strong enough to go right now and storm the Teep's lands. Plus, I still need to go on a journey. Though that might be a little while away as apparently that's meant to be pretty taxing. A journey? She questioned. He gave her a small nod before responding, yeah, I need to finish waking up my sire's powers. They're still rather dormant. Don't worry, I plan on dragging you along with me. You won't be able to hide who you are after that. I can see why you would wait. Very well, so long as you have a plan I am content. If you'll hand me those I will make sure they are prepared for tomorrow. He nodded and handed his clothes over before stretching out. I might turn in for the day. I'll see you tomorrow, Rin. Of course. I shall find you something for breakfast as well, seeing as it is a big day, I guess. He let out a small laugh as he climbed into bed. He gave her a final look before pulling the covers up. Thanks, Rin, for sticking around. Of course, you'd be lost without me after all. Yeah, I just might be. What an odd thing for him to say. She was about to press further but thought against it and left. He had his method with dealing, and she'd leave it to him until he could no more. Still, he could lean on her a little more. That's what she was made for after all. Naruto stretched and groaned before sliding from the horse he rode. He took in a deep breath and scanned the area around them. It was clear, for the most part. A few trees sparsely sprinkled around what appeared to be a lake of liquid silver. Well, this is certainly interesting. Naruto, I have noticed that you tend to avoid the crowds these days, more so than usual. This pool before us is a little creation that I've set forth. It took some time and a lot of old magic to secure it as a ritual site. It requires only a few tiny drops of blood to create a scrying spell that is untraceable. Be it political enemies, heinous villains or well-to-do heiresses, none shall know. You know, unless they have a similar sort of knowledge of ancient magic, but most devils don't even bother to look into that. I thought something like this could be interesting for someone like you, Surziches. Surziches let out a sigh as he dropped down from his horse and moved to stand by Naruto. You don't normally give me gifts unless you're asking for my help. I know. Venilana and I, well, we believe that our show during the promotional examination went a little too far. There was a large sigh from Surziches before he hummed. It seemed more to himself and as a way of thought than having any particular motion on the surrounding circumstances. I take it that my mother is not as excellent a teacher as she made it out to be, and that you can't actually use the power of destruction. I can, just not in the way mentioned. I'm a Kruznik, as you know. Naruto watched him for a nod, and part of that means that I can borrow power from those that I've recently fed from. If I was to feed from, say, someone with the power of destruction right before an examination, then I would be able to use it there to prove a point. Surziches continued to nod alongside Naruto's words. He appeared to be following the train of thought. And you're telling me this, why exactly? So that you can use those mighty Satan powers of yours to calm the people. There are lines and lines of them trying to get Venilana to train their peerage members. Not to mention the Bale family seems to be after our heads right now. I just thought I'd push a little bit of work your way so that you can aid us in clearing this up a little. In short, my mother made a mistake and is too proud to admit it. In short, yes. Surziches let out a throaty laugh before looking down at the silver pool. Well, I guess you can show me how this thing works. I might not be able to fix it immediately, but there are some things I can do to protect you too and to pull some of the issues away from you. Though I might need to bring in Seraphil to help smooth issues in some places. This isn't a problem, I hope. No, well, she isn't always that, ditzy, is she? Because that could be a problem. Surziches let out a small chuckle. No, not always. That's more just how she relaxes. Okay, said Naruto. He walked forward and looked back at Surziches, who had followed him up Toddy Edge. He stretched a hand out and cut it open with a burst of magic, letting the blood flow in the pool below. Now you need to focus on the person, create a clear image of them and speak their name with confidence. Like so. Michelangelo's. The pool glowed a blinding light before Surziches and Naruto found themselves standing in a large golden room. In the middle were a set of stairs that led to an ornate throne upon which sat a youthful-looking male with long blonde hair and a burning halo above his head. Naruto took a few confident strides forward and socked Michael in the face. Though much to his displeasure his hand went right through the image. Welcome to the throne of God. Also, as you noticed we can move around, but we can't actually interact with anything here. Wait, if we're at the throne of, well, you know who, where is he? Naruto turned and rose a brow at the man. You don't know. When Surziches shook his head, Naruto laughed. He took a mighty step forward and spread his arms out wide. He went and kicked the bucket. And you knew this, how exactly? That's a very long story. The short of it though, is that heaven had a deal with my famillion that they broke. Hence why I'm with you all now. Surziches gave a silent nod in response. There was a pause, and the two stared at one another for a few moments before Surziches scratched at his chin. How do we leave? Like so, Naruto put his fingers together to form a triangle and took a single breath in. Karis. There was another flash of bright light, and the two found themselves standing in front of the pool of silver liquid once more. Easy enough to use, isn't it? Indeed, and now that you've brought me here I can return whenever I like. You do have my thanks, though I will require to hear more of your story when you are ready. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I need to call a meeting of the Satans. This will be interesting, and I believe you should go visit Ria's. She looked quite put out when you left with me. You won't get jealous, will you? Hardly. She only has one brother, there are a bunch of pretty little devils like you running around. Naruto gave a small shrug. I'd rather be called handsome, but being called pretty by someone as effeminate as you isn't too bad either. Ria's paced back and forth in her room. It was difficult to come to terms with, but she could not deny that Naruto was able to use the power of destruction better than she was. Not only that, but there was already whispers of a promotion in store for him. Even though he'd only just become mid-class. It kinda wasn't fair. Not only that he was progressing so fast, but that all these things kept getting in the way of them being able to talk. The day had seemed like the first day in over a week, but he just went and grabbed her brother and took the horses out, and now night was coming. She'd just have to demand to see him in the morning, damn be her mother and her classes. She needed to see her friend. Akeno was nice and all, but well, Akeno just didn't connect in the same way that Naruto. Not to say that they didn't, but like, it was difficult. It feels different when she's talking with him, like she can fully relax and just be a goof and not worry about all this devil stuff. There was a knock at the door and she sat up straight. She'd told the maids to leave her alone and Akeno was busy with her studies. Her parents were probably, yep, not going to think about that, so who is it? She called, somewhat hesitant. It's me. A smile quickly stretched across her face. She brushed herself down and looked around her room quickly. It was a damn mess. Give me a minute to get dressed. 5 minutes later and another check of her room had Rias approach her door and slowly pull it open. You can come in. Naruto nodded and entered. Of course the first thing he did was look around the room, putting Rias on edge. She wasn't used to boys in her room and to be fair most of the time she was just barging in on him. Now that the situation is reversed she can feel no small amount of panic. It's Lee. It's cleaner than I thought it'd be. Oh, well, thank you. You're welcome. Great, things were going great. If someone asked Rias how she felt right now she could safely answer I'm great, thank you very much for asking. There was no way that this was awkward. It was super awkward. She needed something to talk about with him. She looked around the room, nope, she'd put everything she thought was interesting away, because it was geeky. She looked over at Naruto who flopped down onto her bed, his legs hanging over the edge, kicked back and forth, back and forth. How are you finding being a mid-class devil? It's not too difficult, is it? He looked at her with a risen brow. That was kinda stupid. It had been a little over a week, he might not have settled in at all yet. It's not bad, he replied, the requests are a little irksome though. Go to this town, take care of this stray. Make sure people are happy. Find information on this rogue agent. All that kinda stuff. Rias put her hands behind her back and made tight fists while giving him a strained smile. Those weren't mid-class requests. Normally it was just an increase in making deals with humans. She'd need to speak to her mother about the duties she was making Naruto fulfill. Though, he started, I likely won't be doing that kind of thing for long. The old coots up top are trying to push me forward after they saw I could use the power of destruction. About that. Rias sucked in her breath. Could you, teach me sometime, if you aren't busy? Naruto gave her a small nod. If you want physical demonstrations you'll need to get permission from Venilana, though if you just want some instruction I can do that anytime. Like now? She asked and got a nod in turn. Naruto got up from the bed and walked over to her. How much do you know about how devils use magic? That it is powered by our imagination, is there anything else on that? Well, let me ask you this, if it is just powered by imagination, then why are there only a handful of people that can use the power of destruction? Rias stared at him for a long while. She hadn't thought too much about that honestly. Isn't it just because it is inherent to our family? To an extent. If that were the case though, then why is there such a difference between your brother and your mother, or your mother and you? He paused and she shook her head. Magic has core rules that come with it. Understanding, energy supplied and law. Now law and understanding kinda work together at times, for instance water puts out fire. But if you push a large amount of energy into a fire spell, you will turn the supplied water into steam and your fire will continue. Rias nodded, so far things were making sense. They weren't really taught this. It was more. Visualize this one thing very strongly and they continued on such lines of thought until it was drilled into their heads. Without warning he took her hands and held them between the two. Rias watched with a frenzied fixation as his nimble, rough hand slowly peeled her fingers open. Now a small little exercise for us. We'll use fire as I can control that easiest if it gets out of hand. She nods. Okay, I want you to let go of whatever you're feeling now. I want you to be a blank slate, no running emotions. Close your eyes. She had half a mind to shout at him that it'd be impossible with him in her room, alone. Her bed somewhat tossed and Night quickly stepping in. They were still close. A strong enough pusher a trip could land them on her bed and then no. No time for thoughts like that. Something blank. Anything blank. Snow. Yeah, snow was rather blank. She started to focus on the stark white snow that would cover landscapes and it was, admittedly, relaxing to a point. Good. Now create the shape of flames. You should have seen them often enough. It was true she had. She'd seen him dance through with them and twirl them around when he was enjoying himself. Well that's interesting. Rias creaked an eye open and saw a figure running around with small bouts of fire shooting out of them like pistons and quickly closed her eyes once again. Not bad. Creative, but it seems to still be under your control. Now let's try something a little harder. He waited and the pause lingered for a while longer. Ria's got the message and nodded. The link that acts as fuel and the easiest way to channel more energy into your fire-based spells is passion. Or forms of it. A passionate hate will serve a different form than a passionate love. Now I want you to choose one and to slowly focus that passion into your palms. Ria's nodded. Stark snow and tumbling winters, a dancing Naruto. A passion. His home, wrecked and torn asunder. His body upon the cross ripped and broken. She'd find who did that. One by one and lock them in the cellars. There would be nowhere for them to run, and each morn she'd let visages of the day creep in and roast their toes to wake them. She'd find the right amount of silver, possibly with Rin's help, and drip feed it to them. Not enough to kill them, but enough so that they'd burn. Yes, death was too good for what they did. She'd take her time and break them, make them relive what they did to him, and forge them into tools that she could use to further her own goals before utterly discarding them. They'd be her broken balls. I think that's enough. Ria snapped her eyes open and saw between her hands a raging torrent that Naruto was doing his best to stop from spilling out. Naruto. She panicked, and the flames quickly started to spiral out of control. Honestly, why didn't you teach her how to stop these things first? Isn't that like the first lesson you're meant to teach someone when it comes to magic? Okay, this is how to put out a ball of fire when it no doubt goes out of control, because you get too caught up in your own thoughts. Okay, they could workshop the damn tittle another time. She was about to ask for help before noticing her flames quickly starting to siphon to a singular point. They formed into a tiny spiraling ball that gave off a strange discordant whining sound. Naruto stood there holding it firmly as it whined. He took a few breaths to steady himself and looked over to her before smiling. Hey now, that wasn't so bad. Pretty impressive actually. Slowly, ever so slowly he crushed the flames into a solid fist. The two stood there for a while, and Naruto slowly opened his fist. There were tiny sear marks on the skin that were quickly fading. Ria stepped forward and took his hand, touching the quickly fading marks. I shouldn't have lost control like that. Nah, it's fine. It's why we did fire over anything else. Easier for me to control, still, I believe it got my point across. Ria's tilted her head to the side. Naruto let out a small sigh. Magic that is purely created from the imagination is easy to control. Anyone can. But once you start to add your own emotions, your fuel, it becomes much more powerful and a hell of a lot harder to control. It's how the Satans are able to be such powerful devils, along with many other named devils. That made sense. Ria's nodded and looked his hand over again. The marks were all but gone now. Slowly she turned up to face his gaze once more. Do you use this type of magic? She watched his face scrunch up. He seemed to be thinking his answer over. That meant it wasn't a simple yes or no, which was a little confusing already. Kind of. I used to use it a lot, but now my flames, well, they act more like an extension of my will. Maybe that's not right. My flames expand and contract based on what kind of feelings I put into them, but they only act upon my intent if that makes sense. No, of course it didn't. Nothing about him made sense to her, and it was her greatest source of both wonder and irritation. He was a puzzle that she was just unable to solve. Every time she would get a step closer it was like he'd just turned the page and there was another part right there. Sure, kind of. She answered. Though even he had to tell she wasn't actually sure. Yeah, I'll think of a better way to put that he trails. Riaz notices that his attention is starting to waver a touch. Her eyes scanned the room. She needed something fast, otherwise this would become awkward again. Ah, her books. Naruto, how about you tell me a story like you used to? He seemed pensive at the idea before he nodded and looked around awkwardly. Seemingly for a place to sit. Riaz though had a better idea. She dragged him over to bed and crawled in before tossing the covers over them. We tend to fall asleep anyway, so let's at least be comfortable this time, no. She felt like cheering for herself. Such a bold move and not a single stutter, definitely a point for her. He laid down and Riaz backed herself into him. Dragging an arm over her waist to hold her close. He let out a soft hum before starting. Let me tell you about Sekhmet and the horrors she has brought unto man. Riaz felt herself melting into him. His voice easing out any worry she had formed for herself. These little moments where they could be themselves and talk in hushed voices as they shared wisdom, she would always relish this. What if Naruto finds his bloodline in high school DxD? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.